So I want to discuss what all of this means, what to expect. To break it down here, we have Avi Loeb, a professor of science at Harvard University. He has a lot of different titles and wears a lot of hats. Thank you so much for taking the time, Avi, to be here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And first off, I wanted to start by kind of going in reverse here. When you heard President Obama, former President Obama's comments there about aliens, extraterrestrial life there on that podcast, kind of tell me what was going through your mind at that point.
Well, what it implies to me is that there are objects in the sky that the government cannot identify, and perhaps other materials that were recovered on the ground that are puzzling. And frankly, the U.S. government is not a scientific organization, so their duty is to protect national security. And obviously, the fundamental question is whether any of this data represents materials or technological gadgets from adversarial nations. But when they can't figure it out, it raises a lot of questions. It could be from out of this world. And for that, I think scientists can help government figure it out. And so my hope is that they will release as much as they can. And I will be glad to engage with the White House, with the Congress, in figuring out the nature of those unusual phenomena that they noticed.
Do you think, based on what you've seen, past presidencies, past information that's been declassified, that we will actually get any new information here?
My hope is that we will, if it exists. And I haven't been privy to such information, so I don't know if it exists. But there are people talking about it that used to be in government. There are military personnel that definitely testified before Congress about unusual phenomena. And so the question is, what do they represent? And the best way to approach it is with a clear mind, the scientific scrutiny, and figuring out what these things mean. I'm leading the Galileo project that is collecting independently data by using 3 observatories, one in Massachusetts, another one in Pennsylvania, and the third in Nevada. And we're trying to see if there are any outliers among the millions of objects that we see in the sky. But presumably the US government has more data because they monitor the sky for a long while. And there are incentives for the Pentagon, for the intelligence agencies to keep it under wraps, because if it represents adversarial nations, then obviously you don't want to show the vulnerability of the US defense system. Also, if you can't figure out what an object means, it's actually embarrassing, because the defense budget is close to $1 trillion in 2026. So we're paying a lot of money, and yet we don't figure out some things. And so there is clear incentive for some of these organizations to keep it under wraps. But in particular, when dealing with data from 50 years ago, there is no reason to do that, because the technologies back then were not really relevant to the battlefield today.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of questions about when this is going to be released, when the files could be released, if we're getting video. There's so much information that we just don't know, and it could be a while before we fully kind of realize what we're going to see. But one thing that's important to note, and you kind of touched on this off the top here, is that when we're talking about UFOs specifically, we're not just talking about little green men coming from Mars. We're talking about a lot of different possibilities.
Right. And even if we think of biologics, we can only imagine life as we know it here on Earth. And there is much more real estate among the stars. And it may well be life as we don't know it. We're currently developing AI systems that have cognitive abilities that, may seem similar to what we are doing, but not really. This is alien intelligence that we are developing. It's like putting a lipstick on a pig, trying to make it resemble us in some way. But these AI systems are made of silicon chips, not of flesh and blood. And the same if we find things coming from another star. They may be completely foreign to us. So my approach is similar to going on a blind date. It's better to observe the other side than to have a prejudice or an opinion about it beforehand.
And I wanted to ask kind of your take overall. And of course, you're interested in this, no question. But why do you think there is so much interest here nationwide, globally, when it comes to the potential for UFOs, extraterrestrials, all of that?
Well, are we alone is the most romantic question in science. And if we find that we have siblings in the family of intelligent civilizations within the Milky Way galaxy, it will have huge implications for our future. We may learn about new technologies, new science. They may inspire us to visit their backyard the same way they are visiting our backyard. It will change our potentially philosophical and religious beliefs about our place in the universe. It may bring people together because we will feel that we are all in the same boat here on Earth. There are huge implications not only to science, but also to society. And I think it's as big as any other discovery that we ever made, even bigger than that. So let's first figure out if the data supports it.
How do you go about making sure, and this is more a government question, but ensuring that you can release all of this, declassify it, but you're not actually releasing any sort of sensitive information that could put the country at risk?
Right. So first, the time filter. If we are dealing with old data when technologies were rather primitive here on Earth, then it's easier to identify things that are unusual, and it's also not very relevant to the battlefield today. So that would be my first priority if I were to decide what to declassify. But in addition to that, if it's beyond any doubt an object that behaves in ways that no human-made technology can reproduce, that should be something that is shared with scientists, I hope like myself, because there is no way that our adversaries could have used it. And one type of information, for example, that we haven't really seen is imagery from satellites. They have very high resolution nowadays, and they can easily follow an unusual object. And if it flies beyond the flight characteristics of all the known vehicles that we ever produced, that could be shared with scientists like myself. And I'll be delighted to work with government figuring it out. This is really the most exciting frontier in science. It should be part of the mainstream. And as of now, academia is not really dealing with it.
I would say you're one of the best known, most well-known names in this field overall. So I would not be surprised if the government calls you and kind of gets you involved in this. Avi Loeb, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Anything we missed? Anything you want to add about all of this before I let you go?
Well, thank you so much. The next few months and years will potentially be very exciting. And if the government calls me to help them, they have me at hello.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.